A lot to talk about. We're bringing in U.S. Senator Roy Blunt, Republican, Missouri. Senator Blunt, how are you this morning?
Morning, Greg. How are you this morning?
Doing really well. I want to, before we get into the whole fiscal cliff thing in detail and the tax pledge and all that, I don't know if you got to hear Senator Durbin right there, but he was saying, hey, Social Security, that doesn't add anything to our debt. And technically he's right, but here's the thing, Senator Blunt, that drives me nuts, and Senator Durbin's got to know this. Starting last year, we started paying out more from Social Security than we were taking in. Now, you go to the so-called lockbox, and it's stuffed with IOUs. Now, yes, government is going to pay those IOUs, but since we don't have the money, we have to go borrow it or print more money or raise taxes. So, yes, it does impact our deficits right now. What do you say?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I don't know that you want to eliminate this. I think that's an interesting point. It impacts our deficit in that way, but more importantly, we just need to fix it so it lasts for another 75 years.
No, I agree with that.
Hard to do.
I agree with that, Senator. But if you're out there telling the American people there's no problem with it, it's fine. It doesn't add to our deficit or debt at all because we have this money that we don't have because they're IOUs. I mean, that's like me saying, I had this fund to go to Hawaii, but I spent it on everything else, which is what we've done for the last few decades. And now it's time to go to Hawaii. I say, don't worry, I got the money. And I go in there and I just pull out my IOU. Well, I don't have the money. I have an IOU.
Well, that could be. And I see your point. I just wouldn't want to carry that point to the idea that money doesn't at some point need to be paid back.
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't need to be paid back. Oh, no, I agree with you. I'm just saying the point is it's a problem. That's all I'm saying.
It's a problem, and it's a fixable problem, and we ought to fix it.
Yes.
My dad, who will be 91 in a few days, was 65 when he could qualify for Social Security. I don't know that he signed up that day or not. He still was farming and doing lots of things, and he may not have signed up at 65. I'm going to be closer to 67. My children are going to be 69 or 70 if this program lasts. And it won't last unless we occasionally adjust it, just like Ronald Reagan did 30 years ago. The idea that the president knows this is the easiest of these problems to solve, why he wouldn't want to take the leadership to solve this. And the other thing I'd mentioned, Greg, you and I have talked about before, divided government is actually the best time to solve big problems because you have to share the political responsibility. Neither Republicans or Democrats have heard since 1983 with finger pointing, you changed Social Security, so I had to be older than my brother when I retired, because everybody had to be in on the change, and that's one of three big programs that need to be changed. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid need to be reformed if they're going to last, and I think we need them to last.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that the problem is Social Security is the easiest one to fix, and the quicker you do it, the easier it is, and you're still saying they're not going to touch it, and that tells you an awful lot about what this so-called balanced approach is going to be. It looks like it's really going to be raise taxes and spend more, not cut. I mean, if you look at this, a great piece by Michael Tanner today, he was saying if you look at the numbers here, the president's most recent budget, he's calling for 2.6 in increased spending, 2.6 trillion between now and 2022. That's $1 trillion more than the 1.6 trillion he called for in new taxes. So in effect, these new tax hikes would actually be used for new spending, not to reduce any kind of deficit problem that we have. And yet they're telling this is a balanced approach. How is that balanced?
Well, it's not balanced at all. It's not good for the economy. The problem with the federal government is not that we tax too little. It's that we spend too much, and we spend too high a percentage of the ability of the country to produce goods and services. Anytime you get in the range we're in now, you're becoming Greece-like in the relative spending of your government to the relative strength of your economy, and that has devastating impact on the economy. It is a foolish thing to do. Hopefully, I'm certainly not going to be part of it, and hopefully the Republican House will stop the president from this increased spending and raising tax rates.
Here's the thing, Senator Blunt, that's getting us, is that we see Republicans already negotiating themselves down in the media, where the media is hammering on this. Are you going to raise taxes? Are you going to break that Grover Norquist pledge? Are you going to raise taxes? How are you going to raise taxes? How much? And now you're a signer of the Grover Norquist pledge, which simply says I pledge to the American people and to the people of my state as a senator that I will not raise tax rates and I will not get rid of deductions unless I get rid of the deductions while lowering the rates. It sounded a lot like Mitt Romney's plan, but already, Senator Blunt, we're hearing senators and congressmen say, I'm not going to go along with that pledge anymore, and, we can increase revenues by getting rid of the deductions, but they're not talking about lowering the rates anymore. Where do you stand on this as a signer of the pledge?
Well, I'm going to take the position you said everybody should take, which is don't negotiate this in the media. Don't talk about it with anybody that just happens to ask you about it. I'm not going to be for any increased taxes of any kind unless we see significant long-term reform. And even then, I don't want to raise rates. I think raising marginal rates has negative impact on the economy, just like raising capital gains taxes or taxing dividends like they were regular income have negative impact on the economy, and I don't intend to be part of that.
One of the things that just drives me crazy is this idea somehow that the rich are all getting by without paying taxes. And Senator Blunt, we talk about on the show many times, you look at the IRS numbers, and it says the top 1% of income earners are earning approximately 20% of the income, but they're paying approximately 40% of all the income taxes. So it sounds to me like they're already paying twice their fair share, $1,000 a year.
In the years since the Bush tax cuts that I worked hard to get enacted as the chief vote counter in the House, the whip in the House, we've actually shifted that tax shifted the burden of overall taxes a little more toward wealthy Americans because we came up with the 10% bracket instead of the 15% bracket that families and low income, every individual pays on their first dollars they pay income tax on. The marriage penalty, the child tax credit, all of those things actually helped working families, but it shifted the overall tax burden even a little closer to the top of the earning strata.
Right.
And that's exactly right. And raising rates will hurt the economy, and everybody knows that, including the president. So we're going to see if he wants to hurt the economy or not. And I can't imagine why he'd want to be the president during a recession created by his actions, which will be letting these taxes go up to higher rates.
Senator Blunt with me here on the KCMO morning show, and talking about, we know that really the big problem, and President Obama said this his first term. He said it in 2010. He said it when he ran the first time, that everybody knows the main problem here is the unfunded liabilities of our entitlements of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, that if we don't fix that, we go broke. There's just no way around it. Trillions, tens of trillions of dollars in liabilities. Social Security facing $22 trillion. I mean, even if you do everything under Obamacare to supposedly reform Medicare, and you look at their most rosy scenario, it's still $42 trillion in the red. So here's the thing when you talk about pledges. More than half of the Democratic congressmen, 11 senators, have signed a pledge to oppose any changes to Social Security and Medicare. And the president has put nothing forward to do this. So, Senator Blunt, do you think there's going to be anything in this plan to really reform these programs?
This is the time when the president has to lead. He ran to be the leader. He was elected. He has to lead. This is a moment when Ronald Reagan or Lyndon Johnson would have either one been saying, here's what I want to do, and I'm going to do my best to persuade the Congress to join me in doing it. The president has no plan. He won't present a plan. We're now at the end of the fourth year of the president refusing to lead on these big issues. He's the guy that said in the campaign, you can't fix Washington from Washington, so I'm going to fix it by campaigning all over the country, which is what he's doing this week. And whether he likes it or not, this problem has to be solved here, and it has to be It has to be a solution that the Republican House of Representatives that was elected the same day he was is willing to sign on to, and if his proposal is any less than that, he's failing to do his job as the leader. That's
a great point. The House, still Republican. It's divided government. It's what the people wanted for a reason, and you got to come together to do that. And that brings me up to this nuclear option thing. The Senate Democrats back in 2005, including Obama, by the way, talked vehemently against getting rid of the filibuster just for judicial nominees. And now we've got Senator Reid talking about getting rid of it for everything, perhaps just a simple majority in the Senate like you have in the House, which would mean that they can run right over you guys. What's going on with that?
Well, it's a big mistake, and it's a big mistake for a number of reasons. One is the Senate shouldn't become the House. I like the House. I served in the House for a long period of time. The House is run by the majority, and it can put a lot of things out there based on the last election. The Senate is, by the design of the Constitution, supposed to moderate any rush to judgment, so it takes a while to be sure that's what people really wanted to do. And it would be a big mistake to turn the Senate into the House, just like it would be a big mistake to turn the House into the Senate. And it also at a time when you should be trying to bring people together. Harry Reid throws this, kicks over this hornet's nest that's going to serve no real purpose because, let's think about this, Greg. If something passes the Democrat-controlled Senate by 51 votes, it then has to go to the House. Any bill that doesn't get any Republican votes in the Senate is not going to pass the U.S. House of Representatives. So it's just all chest beating and trying to prove that you can do whatever you want to do, but what you don't want to do is legislate. And it's time that Senator Reid decided we should have a budget. You know, the budget's the one thing the majority could do now with 51 votes, and They haven't passed one in over 3 years.
That's a great point.
So it's a huge mistake. There'll be a big price to pay. If he does that. Most of the work of the Senate is still done by unanimous consent, where everybody says, okay, I'm for this particular thing, let's go ahead and get it done. If Harry Reid wants to fight about everything and not solve any problems, this is one way to do it, and the last 2 years would indicate, the last 3 years, that he's not that interested in solving problems or passing budgets or anything else. But he's in the majority. Now we'll see if he wants to abuse that majority by trying to turn the Senate in the House. The rules of that Senate would work just fine if we were willing to work. If we were willing to work at night, if we would stay Friday and Saturday if necessary, you can wear individual senators down, but Senator Reid, for whatever reason, doesn't want to do that. He'd rather dictate what happens rather than let the idea of the Constitution let things happen in the way that they have happened in the country now for well over 200 years.
Well, we appreciate the time. We wish you luck on the fiscal cliff. It's got to be, as you say, entitlement reforms, and it should not be increase in marginal tax rates. And I'm telling you, everybody that answers this show and emails and calls is saying we've got to have the Republicans stay strong. The Democrats would not be caving in at all if they lost, and the Republicans shouldn't either.
Well, those two guideposts you just established are really important. Entitlement reforms, because when you reform the entitlement programs as opposed to discretionary spending, they actually usually stay reformed. The 30-year-old deal on Social Security was never changed. The Clinton Republican House agreement on changing welfare has never been changed.
Well, Obama did it.
Billions of dollars in both cases has been saved.
Obama changed that welfare reform, but I understand your point. Thanks for being with us.
He changed the rules, and on the margins he changed it, but he didn't change. We're nowhere near where we were on welfare if it would have continued to grow at the rate it was growing.
Oh, totally agree with that.
1993.
Yeah, totally agree. Got to run.
Talk to you, Greg. Thanks for what you do every day.
Thanks very much. We appreciate you being with us today.